On March 19, 2015, Farkhunda Malikzada was lynched to death in Afghanistan on false accusations of burning the Quran by a mullah. She was attacked by hundreds of Afghan Muslim men who beat her, ran her over, dragged her by a car, stoned her, and then burned her alive while the police watched. Farhonda was 27 years old and she was working as a volunteer teacher. She was studying Islamic law and she was dreaming of becoming a judge. Her mother described her as a really brave woman who wasn't afraid to speak her mind. On March 19, after she said her prayers at a shrine, she got into an argument with a mullah who was selling amulets, little scraps of paper that had Quranic verses on them, because she considered these amulets to be superstitious and un-Islamic. So the amulet seller, the mullah, started screaming, "This woman is an American, she has burned the Quran." A crowd gathered with many people starting to record, and they distributed these recordings later. The footage is extremely disturbing. The mob gathered Farkhunda to the street and started beating her and stomping on her. They bludgeoned her with sticks and rocks. Then they placed her onto the road and they ran over her by a car, dragging her body behind the car. Police offered very little resistance. They tried to disperse the crowd at first, but then they gave up and they started directing the traffic around the scene. The mob dragged her body to a river bank nearby and they took turns stoning her. And then they tried to set her on fire, but her body was so soaked with blood that they couldn't do it. So they started ripping off their own clothes to ignite the fire and maintain the fire. They kept shouting Allahu Akbar while they were lynching her, even after they were certain she was dead. In a very unprecedented act in this country, women started getting together during her funeral and they carried her coffin and they decided that they would not let any man touch her coffin. About 2 days later, there was a march of thousands of women and men around Kabul chanting "We are all Farkhunda." 49 men were charged in connection with her murder, including 11 police officers, who were sentenced to a year in prison, and there were 4 death sentences for the men who had murdered Farkhunda. But these verdicts were all reversed later behind closed doors, of course. The place of Farkhunda's death was marked by a tree in the days after the attack. This is now a permanent memorial.